Hey guys, I'm going to do a video here on paint gun setup. Basic how to just get started when you're going to either get a new gun or buy a used one or whatever. So I'm going to start at the bottom. I like to use a regulator on all my guns. I'd recommend it because you can actually, it's more detailed, it's more precise than just dealing with this control here, which is also an air regulator. The guns that I have, I always run them all the way open, so back it out counterclockwise all the way, and just rely on this gauged regulator to set your pressure. The only thing I want to show you, you've probably heard or read, you set the pressure with the trigger pulled. Okay, now you may or may not know that paint guns actually have like a two-position trigger. You got air, I don't know if you can see it, but you got air, and then you get your material. So they say with the trigger pulled, right now you see my, I don't know if you can see it or not, but my gauge is at like 50 psi. When I pull the trigger, it'll drop down to the operating pressure. So with the trigger pulled, you're going to see the needle drop, and that's where you actually set your regulated pressure to what you need the gun to run at. In this case, it's 29 psi. So I pull the trigger and set it to 29 psi. So having said that, we'll go over the rest of the controls. Like I said, this is the air regulator right down here. Now, not all guns have this. My DeVille is here. You can see it doesn't. You can see the background. There's nothing there. It doesn't even have one, so you have to use some sort of an external regulator, which I use anyways. Next, go up the gun. This first knob will be your material. Let me grab this one. Well, this will be your material flow, and how you would set this is you pull the trigger all the way back and back this thing out until you can, because what will happen is you'll pull the trigger, you'll back it out, you'll feel the trigger moving back, and then you want to screw it back in until the trigger just starts to move forward. I mean, you can see it. It's actually pushing my fingers forward. So at the point where it just starts to push the trigger forward again is a good starting point. That's your material flow. That's how far the needle gets pulled back into the gun, which then opens the orifice at the end, which allows the material to flow out. So if you are spraying and it's just too much, too heavy, you can turn it in, which will back off the amount of material that you're actually is exiting the gun. So we'll move up a little bit more. The next knob up is your fan control. That's what takes it from the long, thin shape actually down into a small, almost like an airbrush, but a small circle. On this gun and many guns, you'll see it's right above the material flow, but on some, it'll be on the side of the gun. Does the exact same thing, just in a different location. Once you get, here, to set your fan, back it out all the way, turn it in about quarter to a half turn. And then once you get all of these settings the way you want them to be, you know, your regulator set to your inlet pressure, your material flow to that spot, turn your fan all the way out, back it just back in, you're going to want to do a test spray. Take a scrap piece of paper with whatever paint or something in it that you want. You're going to hold it at the distance that you're going to spray away from your project and give it a good 1/1000 pull and let go. What you should see is something that looks like this. A nice, even, cigar-shaped pattern. If you don't see that, you're going to have an issue. One thing you could see, this probably shows up more on the cheaper guns. It's heavier on the ends and lighter in the middle. And what's happening is there's actually too much, you're actually splitting your fan, they call it. So if that's happening, there's actually too much air being diverted for your fan pattern control. Just creep it in a little bit bit at a time and keep doing the test spray, and that should widen up in the middle and give you a nice solid shape. And then remember about where your adjustment was for the next time. If you see something like this, where it's heavy on one end and thin on the other, then you probably have some sort of a blockage or a restriction. And that usually comes in all these tiny little holes right here on the cap. So you're going to want to take the cap off, hold it up to a light source, look through all the holes, make sure you can see them all. Keep in mind this is brass, so you don't want to be sticking screwdrivers or picks into those little holes. You can take small wire, maybe copper wire, because copper's a softer metal. Or what I actually like to do is those twist tie bread wraps that you get like in a bread bag, the twisty ties. It has a small wire in the middle. I'll take a razor blade and cut either side, pull the paper away so you just have the small little wire, and carefully dip it in some lacquer thinner and just get the gunk out of those little holes. So that's basically it. I would recommend that before you even start doing this, to make sure your gun is clean. Take it all apart, especially if it's brand new and it comes with like a greasy film on everything, and you don't want to, all of a sudden, hey, I'm going to paint my car. You put your paint in and you start spraying and you got these globs of junk everywhere. So clean it out with either lacquer thinner or acetone for any kind of automotive stuff. You don't want to use mineral spirits or paint thinner, not for automotive paint. Yeah, start out with a good clean gun, do your test sprays, make sure you get all your settings right. There's a guy, I don't know his name, but he goes under, I think it's a Butler Collision. The guy's actually an instructor at an auto body college or school. He's got a lot of cool videos, a lot of good tech, hands-on information stuff. I just watched a video from him the other day. He does those initial settings that I showed you, but then he'll actually turn his needle in more and turn his fan in more. So he's restricting his flow, and he's actually shrinking his pattern somewhat. He's an instructor, so I'm assuming he knows what he's talking about. But there's a lot of guys, so I just do like little motorcycles and stuff. There's a lot of guys that spray every day, maybe do like high-end custom jobs. They can look at their test spray, and just by the overspray around it can tell, okay, I need 2 psi less or 2 psi more, or a quarter turn on this or a quarter turn on that. That's over my head. But I can tell you that if you get a shape that resembles this, you're headed in the right direction. And then it's just, if you've never painted before, or you're a beginner, you're just starting out, a lot of practice. Don't learn on what you want to paint. Like if you're painting a car or a motorcycle, practice on an old scrap hood or an old scrap fender, get the feel for it, but try to get this shape. Make sure your inlet pressure is at what's recommended by the manufacturer or thereabouts, and then start from there.